Welcome into the Bear Squad Show. I'm Joe George, post-game host. DJ Moore feels like the number one question of the offseason. Will he or will he not be a Chicago Bear in 2026?
I'm Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears. Second biggest question for the Bears is how they're going to fix this defense and fill all the needs on that side of the ball.
Hey guys, Taylor Doyle here, host of Making Monsters. And now that Declan Doyle is gone, we have some conversations of how we'll replace them. They make their first request with Connor Sanger from the Cardinals.
Bear down, Chicago. It's the Bears Squad. Everything Chicago Bears every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Windy City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. From Soldier Field to the next great chapter, the Bears Squad Show starts now.
Welcome into the Bear Squad Show here on the Locked On Bears YouTube and audio channels. Joe George, Lauren Cox, and Taylor Doyle here with you for the next hour as we discuss DJ Moore, the offseason, Declan Doyle leaving for the Baltimore Ravens, and we'll talk a little Super Bowl as well since that big game is coming up this weekend. But, you know, in that teaser there, I said it's the biggest question of the offseason of DJ Moore. And I want to preface that you know, there's not been any like real reporting on what the Bears' intentions are with DJ Moore. It just feels like fan and media speculation at this point. But to me, it does feel like the number one question of just like, what are the Bears going to do with DJ Moore? So we'll just start there. Lauren, is it your number one question, or do you feel like there's something that trumps the DJ Moore question for the Bears?
Yeah, I'm starting to feel the DJ Moore thing losing a little bit of steam as more and more comes out with it. I think just this morning, Brad Biggs from the Chicago Tribune was on one of the Chicago, I think it was The Score, but I can't remember for sure, and talked about how, like, given how big DJ Moore's contract is, it makes it more of a challenge to move him. That the value you're going to get for DJ Moore is a lot lower than you might think it is because he's coming off of his worst season in a number of years, just statistically, right? Not even necessarily on the field. We've heard Antoine Mandel and Ben Johnson, everybody rave about DJ Moore and how much they like him, but like, you know, he was under 1,000 yards. He wasn't anywhere close to 100 catches. Like his perceived trade value externally is maybe as low as it has ever been in his career at this stage of the process. So yes, you could save some salary cap space from him, but the team that would be trading for him has to find a way to fit, you know, I think he's got 28 million and a half is his cap hit this year. I think if you traded him, you would save like 16 of that, but other teams are still gonna have to absorb some of that future guaranteed money that makes it so the actual value there. Like a lot of times in the NFL, you're trading for contracts just as much as you're trading for players. And given that, yes, they can restructure it and push the money in the future and lower that price now, but it's still a lot of money that's due to him over time that some team is gonna have to pay. So I wonder if the Bears just look at this and say, yeah, we still like DJ Moore enough, and maybe the juice isn't worth the squeeze to move on from him and say, we'll keep him around because, hey, heck, we're a better player with him in the offense than without him, unless you really get a good offer.
Yeah, it's hard for me to, and I get this is that time of year where you're just trying to figure out ways to get the salary cap to where you have money. And that's where the Bears are right now. They know they have to make moves physically to get above that negative amount right now. But it's hard for me to sit here and say the offense, I feel like, yes, maybe he's not getting the numbers you wanted this last season, but it's also a big part of that because they were able to spread the ball around and you have other weapons that you can count on throughout the season. It's hard to just totally disqualify the fact that both of probably the biggest wins you had this season were DJ Moore touchdown catches. And that's when we've seen him in big moments shine when you really needed him to. And so it's hard for me to say, like, I get people on Twitter and they're like, you know, going the back and forth in the argument of does DJ make this team better? I think yes. I think that DJ Moore is just kind of more that veteran piece that you need on this offense, and you're moving forward. And you know, Rome's still young, and obviously Luther's young, and Colston's young. So you have so much youngness. I think that having that veteran guy like a DJ, who we've seen in moments with the yards after catch and things that he can do there, it's an extra an extra bump for your offense. And I think it'd be kind of silly to trade that if it wasn't for something significant. And we've talked about the like, oh, what if it's sending him to the Raiders and you get a Max Crosby? That's when you start having conversations if it's something huge like that. But I don't know if just saving a few $1 million getting rid of him is worth it at this point in time.
Yeah, I think I'm with you guys. Like at the end of the season, you know, obviously like we're all emotional when the season ends on that final play. It's like, this sucks and doesn't look like DJ Moore's trying very hard. But the Bears have been very, like, Ben Johnson's been very honest this year when mistakes have been made. And he has called players out maybe not necessarily specific plays, but he's always been transparent as the Bears head coach. And I feel like with his answer and taking the blame for it, I kind of want to give DJ Moore the benefit of the doubt. Like, I think it's just like we have to kind of come to grips with the fact that like he's never going to be a good body language guy. Like, it's just kind of the reality of like that. If that's what you want from DJ Moore, like, I'm sorry. Like, it's just that's not the player he's going to be. So I'm with you guys. Like, I think now it's if you're not going to get proper value in return because of what that salary is, then I think you are better off with him. You've got Rome Odunze questions with, he got injured last year. He's got some drops problems. Luther Burden didn't have a full camp last year. Like, maybe DJ Moore turns into a very expensive third option, Lauren. Like, that would be fine. Just it's going to be expensive, but it's still you're just better with him.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at how the season went this past year, like the Bears are still primarily a 3 wide receiver offense. Like, as much as they use the tight ends, every team is primarily a 3 wide receiver offense. I was just looking at the personnel numbers last night. Like, I think about 55% of their offense was 3 wide receivers, like 11 personnel, and then then about a third was 12 personnel, and another like 10-15% was 13 personnel. Like, 3 wide receivers is still the primary group of your offensive packages. Like, you want to have 3 really good wide receivers, and so it doesn't feel like a spot that. I mean, it's still a little bit of a luxury. Yeah, you could afford to not have DJ Moore, and you could get by with Odunze, Burden, and then Olamide Zaccheaus or Ja'Day Walker as your number 3, sure. But like, it's still like a primary playmaking role in your offense. Even your number 3 wide receiver is still a really important player and really a starter in this offense, even more so than say your number 2 tight end, like Cole Kmet, who's probably a different trade conversation we could expand out on at some point.
What would be, because I agree with what you said, Taylor, about Max Crosby. Like, that's the dream. Like, I think it's every Bears fan's dream is Max Crosby or Trey Hendrickson, which I think we'll talk more about kind of next week. But if it was just a trade for just draft capital, Taylor, what's your cutoff for this is an acceptable return for DJ Moore, and I'm okay with Ryan Poles trading him away?
It's hard for me to identify that, I feel like, because of everything we got for DJ Moore. So I think in my head, I'm like, the value is still high to me. But I liked how, Lauren, in the beginning, you said externally. Like, the view of DJ Moore probably externally looks a little bit different because of the numbers, because of not hitting that 1,000-yard receiving. Probably the last 2 years, it hasn't been the DJ Moore that people would have thought, from the outside looking in. You don't know the little things that he's done throughout the season to kind of keep things afloat, certain games and the big catches. And just like the moments you really needed DJ to come in, he's been kind of that guy, especially when Rome was hurt and you were still trying to figure some things out midseason. And so it's hard for me to say like, okay, I would need this or this, because in my head, I'm sitting here looking at it. I'm like, at one point in time, it was one of the, you got an absolute haul for DJ Moore. And so to just trade him away for bare minimum would be hard for me to kind of cope with, I feel like.
Yeah, like I think especially when you compare to some other recent wide receiver trades, like I think it paints kind of a bleak picture of, like, I think Bears fans sit here and think, okay, DJ Moore is a number 1 receiver, 1,000-yard guy every year. Like, that should get you a good draft pick, whatever you think a good draft pick is. But like, Deebo Samuel was traded for a 5th-round pick. DeAndre Hopkins was traded for a 5th-round pick. Jerry Jeudy, a 5th and a 6th. Devontae Adams was traded for a 3rd-round pick. Like, I think your best draft trade was Stephon Diggs was traded for a 2nd-round pick, but the Bills had to who they trade him from. Anyway, they had to throw in a 5th and a 6th. It was Diggs plus a 5th plus a 6th to get a 2nd-round pick back from him. So like, anybody who thinks DJ Moore is going to grab a 1st or 2nd-round pick straight up is going to be, severely disappointed. It's more likely, maybe a high day 3 draft pick. Could you talk a team into a late day 2 draft pick? Maybe, but like, I don't think that's a good enough threshold to just trade DJ Moore. Like, that's more like we're trying to get rid of this guy to clear cap space because we just don't want him around, as opposed to we're trying to make the team better in the process of getting rid of him.
Yeah, I think that Diggs is a good name to bring up, because I think he's someone that people think of the 2 Diggs trades of like what DJ Moore's value was. Like the first one where he's traded from, the Vikings to the Bills, it's for a 1st-round pick, but that's, whenever Justin Jefferson was drafted. So it's been a little bit at this point. Then he's traded to the Texans, as you said, Lauren, with extra draft capital for a 2nd. Like, I think that's probably best case scenario is like you get a 2nd-round pick. And if it's a high 2nd-round pick, like if the Raiders called you and were like, hey, we love to put DJ Moore with Mendoza, you're not getting Max Crosby back, but you're getting the 33rd pick in the NFL draft. Like, I'd be like, okay, like I'm in on that. Like, that's nearly a 1st. So for me, I could settle for a 3rd if it like if there was another move with it. It can't be like a standalone though. Like I would struggle like to the core you mentioned, Lauren, of like if they traded a third round pick for, got a third round pick for DJ Moore, and then they rolled out Zacchaeus and Walker next year with Roman Burden, I'd be like, oh, I don't like this deal. Like it feels like it has to come with something on top of it, either maybe through the draft or just through free agency.
I think we all tend to overrate draft picks a little bit as this hypothetical player that's going to be great. We just assume it's going to be a great player. Like, yeah, sure. If you could promise me that the second round pick you're going to get turned into Luther Burden, then it might be a worthwhile trade there. But I think it's probably more appropriate to like think about a more average second round pick. Like today, would you trade DJ Moore for Travion Henderson, for Quinshon Judkins, for Jaden Higgins, for some of these early second round picks from last year? Like those are fine players, and I'm not to disparage them, but like clearly DJ Moore is more valuable to the Bears than any of those guys individually. And I know like long term, could they still develop and become just as valuable players for Chicago? Sure, but like if I'm trying to maximize this window right now for Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson to win while this team is young and ascending, like I'm not sure that even a high second round pick player makes as big of an impact as DJ Moore does right now. I suppose you add in, well, what could you do with the salary cap space plus the player that you get in the draft pick? And you can start to talk yourself into it a little bit more. But man, I really like the idea of a sure thing. You know exactly what you're getting, good and bad, with DJ Moore, as opposed to that second round pick could be a draft bust, and the cap space you use on a free agent could be another Dayo Odengbo and not actually get you anywhere. Like it's easy to assume that everything you gain is going to be positive and that it's going to be just this big swoon for losing DJ Moore, when in reality, like I'll take the bird in the hand and the devil I know here.
Yeah, I think too I go back to the trade the Jags made end season for Jacoby Myers, and that one kind of sticks out too. The Jags had to give up a fourth and a sixth, but Jacoby was he had over 800 yards the season before, and then a 1,000-yard season right before that. And it was also a rental, by the way, because the Jags then had to pay him and have contract negotiations. So I do think the value of wide receivers right now is probably not as high as we want, especially for a player that we do feel like he's a good player. You talk about it in the sense of DJ Moore, it can be a game changer when he wants to. And there's some things that people, maybe loafing moments and things like that people don't like. But I just don't know if you'd get the value you'd want right now out of DJ Moore, at least me personally. I just don't think it would happen close to what we'd want.
Joe, can I throw one potential hypothetical at you?
Yeah, go for it.
And I'm not deep enough in draft class analysis to put names to this yet, but say you're going through the first round and there's a pass rusher who is supposed to go top 10 and he's still on the board at 15. Like, is there like you trade your first round pick and DJ Moore for like that gotta have it pass rusher in the draft, where it's like, okay, you don't have to give up any picks to move up, and you're getting a guy that you feel like makes your roster better? I mean, even as I'm saying it out loud, I don't know if I totally love it, but I think you could sell me on like a draft day trade to like move up and go get a guy that you feel like is just the guy that you have to have, but it's still a gamble that you got to trust that this pick is really going to pan out.
I think it's there. Like it's honestly, like as you were saying that hypothetical, like my homer biased Notre Dame mind went to like maybe the Saints would like DJ Moore and you could trade up to 9 and use 25 and DJ to get Jeremiah Love with a top 10 pick. But like I think like if what's it, David Bailey, the kid from Texas Tech, like if he were to slide, like the first mock drafts before the Senior Bowl and everything that like were still a little premature, like had him going like in like the mid 15s to the 20s. Now he's pretty much like a top 5 guy. So like I think there are guys in this class where pass rush does feel like one of its strengths. The hard part with this draft is the lack of quarterback. I feel like it just changes everything. The fact that there's only really one guy, like it's just like the premium positions are pass rusher in this one. Like we're probably going to see 2 pass rushers go in the top 5 this year. Like it's going to be really challenging, I think, to hope for someone to fall to you. But in that hypothetical, like if there was a player that they love as a pass rusher, I would be cool with like packaging 25 and DJ to go get someone. But I'd rather them be like super aggressive and try to get like up into like the top 10 to go get them.
Totally.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I think it would have to be like, even maybe a little higher than that. Like you get up into the top 8 because it's somebody that's an absolute slam dunk. But to me, if you're trading that 25 and DJ, it has to be somebody like, and you never know. There's still science to what the NFL draft is, but there are ones where people are like, this is a home run. no matter what. And so I do feel like it would even have to lean towards that. But I could see them doing something like that because, I mean, I mentioned before of how they got DJ and all of the compensation that they got out of it and what they've turned that into. And so I do think they could look at it and being like, look, at the end of the day, it's still been worth it because we got DJ Moore and we were able to compile all these draft picks and turn it into obviously a ton of players that now we use and can start on this team. So now we can use DJ and kind of in return maybe fill a big hole that we need. If that's a pass rusher, if they feel like that's a Jeremiah Love, I'm also down for that.
All right, let's continue to take a look at the offseason. Biggest needs, biggest thing we want the Bears to do or not to do. We'll do that next here on the Bears Squad Show. Today's episode of the Bears Squad Show is brought to you by Gusto. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or the hidden fees. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save people hours every single week. And knowing you can reach certified HR experts anytime gives you real peace of mind. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/lockedonnfl and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/lockedonnfl. One more time, that's gusto.com/lockedonnfl. Today's show is also brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever just to hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms, work to get you every single deduction. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, Lauren, what's the one thing you really want to see the Bears do this offseason? Is there a contract restructure, cutting of a player, signing someone? Like, what's at the top of your list when you think about this is what I want the Bears to do this offseason?
Yeah, the top of my list is the same. The thing at the top of my list is the same thing that's been at the top of my list for, I think, 4 straight off seasons. Pass rush. Like we've talked every year since they hired Ryan Poles and Matty Blues, it seems like get pass rushers in here. Like we've had the unique Ngakoue free agent conversation every offseason about before even the start of training camp, could they find one more veteran pass rusher to get in? And I understand last year you got your focus on the offensive line and had to get that squared away. And I can't complain too much because of how successful they were at doing that. And even last year they signed Grady Jarrett and Dio Dangbo, but and they still haven't solved that position and really felt like that is going to be the good thing. And to me, it's not just edge rusher, right? It's interior and on the edge. Go overhaul that as much as you can, given that all 4 of your starters are back under contract and pretty locked in. And you've got Shamar Turner and Austin Booker as younger guys off the bench. There's not a lot of wide open roster spots and salary cap space to fill there, but you just need to keep adding more until that group is good enough. That's priority number 1. Taylor?
Yeah, I think it's hard not to go that way. There's a couple of ways I want to go with this. And part of it is I would like them to, it's not possible that we are going to have to say goodbye to probably some of the ones we don't want to, but as much as possible, if you could keep that secondary with a Brisker, a Byard, and a Nashawn Wright, who all are hitting free agency, I would love to try and keep as many of those as possible, just because I feel like when they're healthy, it's very obvious that when Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker are on the field together, this defense runs just completely different. And so that worries me a little bit in a sense. I think Kevin Byard, even getting a little bit older, has been such a game changer recently too. I would love to have them both back. I think that's probably almost impossible at this point, but I'd like to see it. And Nashawn Wright too. I just think what he's been able to do with Al Harris, I just saw him at the Pro Bowl and talking about how much he's changed everything of how, his world in the NFL and how everything kind of feels for Nashawn Wright. And so part of mine is try and keep as many of those as possible, because I would like to have to think about less on the secondary, because I do think the defensive line as a whole is going to have to be such a big focus. When you talk about the pass rush, we talk about someone out across from Montez Sweat, but in addition to that, you're going to have some linebacker conversations. We're talking about, Tremaine Edmonds being one of the potential cuts because you need some money on the roster. The interior, there's still way too many questions for me. Grady Jarrett, who they signed last year, just couldn't stay healthy this year. And you have to find somebody a little bit more reliable. Andrew Billings, also a free agent. He also got, I don't know, a little chunky this last year and didn't really do what you wanted him to do. Javon Dexter, I like, but you're still waiting to see that kind of next jump for Javon. So I think there's so many questions up front that if you can keep the secondary intact as much as possible, I do think that's beneficial for some of the decisions they have to make.
Yeah, I hate to pick on one guy, but when I think about like making cap space, saving $15.6 million by moving on from Tremaine Edmonds feels like at the top of my list. Like I think it's just the easiest decision that you can make. And now I know the TJ Edwards injury like factors in. DeMarco Jackson, you have to bring him back, but like you talk about cap savings. Like I think Edmonds, like unfortunately, is the guy that I look at first, and I'm like, I think that's the first thing the Bears should probably do this offseason. Like before we talk about saving money with DJ Moore and like would you have DJ Moore or Tremaine Edmonds on this roster? I think the answer is DJ Moore. So Edmonds is the first one that it's like to get that pass rusher that you want, Lauren. Like I think that's like the first thing they have to do. And there are other guys that of course are going to be cut candidates, and it's going to be, look, people don't need to freak out about the cap space. They'll figure it out. It also just expanded by like $50 million again. Yeah. So like they'll have money to play with. It's not going to, doesn't look like it on paper, but yeah, Lauren, Edmonds is the first one that's got to go for me.
Yeah, I mean, he's the third highest paid linebacker in the NFL as far as per year average salary there. And, I don't think he's been abysmal, but he's not the third best linebacker in the NFL. I don't think he's a top 15 linebacker in the NFL. I mean, it's probably not worth, getting stuck in the weeds on where you rank him, but nonetheless, not necessarily earning his salary there. And especially this past season kind of showed us that whether it's this coaching staff's ability to identify linebacker talent like DeMarco Jackson and have these guys kind of come off the bench, Jalen Reeves-Maybin off the street can plug and play at least a replacement level. Like it's certainly not as good as the starters, but you got by with a bunch of backup linebackers in there. So whether it's that they can identify talent or that the scheme just doesn't need special linebacker play to function well, either way, it points to like, yeah, you don't need to have that much money sucked up in Edmonds because you can replace him with a player that's good enough for half of that price, if not less, and then use the remaining $7, $8, $9, $10 million you freed up in that to add elsewhere on your roster to the defensive line or to re-sign these safeties or to, whatever you need to do.
Where are you at, Lauren, with, I want to go back to you real quick on this one with what Taylor mentioned with the safety position right now? Like, do you have hope that they can bring back both guys? Or are you pretty locked in that Brisker is going to be finding a new home?
Yeah, I just think price-wise, it's going to be a little tricky. Like, yeah, you can make money you can create space with restructures and stuff, but it's about how much they want to really fully invest in that position. And sure, yeah, you can create the space, but then it doesn't leave you much money to get a defensive lineman or to add at left tackle or what other spots you want to do. And they could prioritize it that way. But no, I get the impression that Dennis Allen, he inherited these linebackers and these safeties and a lot of these cornerbacks too, and that he had the season to try and figure out who really fits what he wants to do and who maybe isn't, that he can work with, but isn't quite his cup of tea. And I think he's got a real opportunity to get guys that he feels like are his guys at safety. And maybe Byard or Brisker is one of those, but it feels unlikely to me that they run that all the way back, even though I certainly they played at a high enough level this season that you wouldn't mind it if they can find a way to squeeze it in.
How much do you think Al Harris is in on that conversation of who stays and who goes and what they try and figure out?
That's a good question. I mean, Al Harris had one foot out the door this offseason anyway. I have to think if I'm Dennis Allen, I'm looking at this and saying, like, Al Harris is probably gone next offseason. So, of course, like, his input is super, super valuable. But, like, Dennis Allen has tended to be a bit of more of like a stubborn style of coach that kind of like has a certain way he likes to do it and has types of guys that he prefers and that his staff then works with those guys. And it's not to say it's my way or the highway, but just that like he knows that at the end of the day, he's calling the plays and that this is his defense. So he's going to have his coaches coach whoever he brings in the talent for them. So like, I think Harris will be a real voice in there. Harris got Nashawn Wright brought with him to Chicago, but like, I think it's more likely to be the lower cost deals that Harris can have a lot of influence on a veteran minimum guy rather than whether or not you're giving Jaquan Brisker 10, 12, $15 million a year.
Taylor, is there anything that jumps off the page with free agents or draft or anything that you go, I hope the Bears do not do this offseason?
I feel like it's hard for me to go back and forth because I think I argue the running backs, I think, is going to be one of the bigger conversations with the DeAndre Swift and what you do with him. And then from that, like how much money are you getting out of that and what moves are you making? Because it does feel right now that the offense feels a little bit more intact, and it does feel like it's going to be a pretty heavy defensive side this season, which it was opposite last year when it comes to completely revamping the offensive line, and then Luther and Colston and all of that and Kyle Monangai, everything they did offensively. So to me, I don't know if there's anything where I'm like, no way, don't do that. I could probably argue the don't go get another Dio Adangbo and hope that you can just like patchwork another pass rusher. I think you really need to, just like you did the O-line last year, really invest in something that you feel like is going to change that defensive line. Because you just saw it way too much this year, the massive hole and dip, like just team to team. Look at the back end of teams that the Bears played and compare those pass rushers to what the Bears had during that time. And even against some bad offensive lines. And that's when you really started to notice how kind of behind the Bears were in that sense, especially on the outside. So I don't want another, like, let's just get by another year and hope that Austin Booker takes another step up. Like, I really do hope they just try and invest in something that really massively changes that and gives Montez some help too. Because, I mean, you talk about it and even some of the that helps your interior too. So if you get 2 stud pass rushers, how much is that helping some of those guys on the inside create some other stuff and a Dennis Allen defense and function, you know, when it comes to that pass, that when it comes to the pass rush and how much it helps in his defensive schemes, him not having to manipulate and do all these crazy things to create, you know, whatever pressures he possibly can. I think it's huge for him, especially in the secondary.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd like to see them go into the draft not feeling like they really have to hit specific positions strongly. Like, I think even last year, we went in the draft thinking like, man, really need to get a left tackle at some point and really need to get a pass rusher at some point. And maybe it doesn't have to be your first round pick, but boy, if you get all the way to the 5th and 6th round without getting a left tackle or a pass rusher, you're going to be in a really tough spot. And they had the luxury to still take Loveland and Burden with their first 2 picks, but it felt like by the time you got to their other second round picks, they kind of started drafting a bit more for need. Like, Trapillo was not some consensus best player available on the draft board. It worked out, but like, you know, Loveland was like best player available regardless of position, we'll take him. Burden was like best player available regardless of position, we'll take him. And they were your 2 best draft picks, I think, largely for that reason. But then, you know, not to say that like Trapillo was a reach or that Shamar Turner was necessarily a reach, but it was just like, that felt like more like, okay, now we got to pay the bills. Let's go get the guys that you know, take the needs as opposed to luxury of really good players. So I'd like to not go into this draft, say, with a hole at safety where you're like, oh, well, got to find a safety in this draft because you just didn't fill one of the 2 spots, or, oh, you got to get a pass rusher because you didn't do anything in free agency or trade. Like, I really want to just go into this draft saying, who's ever there, you can have preferences for positions for sure, but not like a big need that, oh, you got to get through this draft and take this position because you didn't address it properly in the rest of the offseason.
I think it's a great point.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Taylor.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think you can argue running back too. Like, how much of us were hammering the running back position going into that draft, because obviously you haven't seen enough from Rojo, and it ended up working out with Swift. Obviously Swift kind of had his resurgence, but nobody expected that. So when it got to the 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round, and we hadn't drafted a running back, that people were hitting the panic button there a little bit.
Yeah, I was thinking too, off the running back point that you made, Taylor, and there is, like, I think about all the cap space issues the Bears, you know, kind of have right now, and then what they need to do this offseason. I will, like, while like it's fun to like load up Madden and, you know, in free agency find a way to add Kenneth Walker to this team or Etienne or Breece Hall, like, it's fun in that sense. But like, in terms of like the actual like Chicago Bears, I would like to really stay away from those 3 guys. Like, I think they're all really talented running backs, but I just don't view this offseason is one where like you go invest in the running back position in free agency. Like, if you can find a Rico Dowdle contract to pair that with Monangai, if you move on from Swift, like, sure, like that's $5 million. Like, that's not a big deal, but like, feels like Etienne, Hall, and Walker, like, especially now with the Charbonnet injury, like Walker, I feel like he's going to command a little bit of a market here for like battling between the Seahawks and everyone else. So I'm pretty much like stay away from that running back class. I like him for a lot of other teams. I just feel like it's not the time for the Bears to use free agency to address running back.
Yeah, because that's the thing about like Swift had a good year. Like Taylor said, like he exceeded expectations. And so if you're gonna say release DeAndre Swift and try and get a new free agent running back, like you'll save $7.5 million on the salary cap space. But like, can you get something better than DeAndre Swift for $7.5 million? And maybe say, okay, well, if you get it for 9 and it's an upgrade, then it's worth it. But like, it feels to me like you're kind of just marginally better here and there. There's not like Saquon Barkley is sitting out there in free agency. Like, yeah, sure. The guys that you talked about there, like Kenneth Walker, like better running back than DeAndre Swift, sure. But like, how much better does that make the Bears offense this year? And is that worth taking some of that investment away from, again, like other positions that feel like bigger actual needs? Like upgrading running back is a little bit more of a luxury at this stage than like wow, what a big hole that you really have to feel like if you don't address it, you're going to be in trouble next season. Like they can run it back with the exact same group and be just fine.
All right, as we were live on Friday, within like 20 minutes of the show being over, Declan Doyle took the Ravens job. So like, I feel like we're on like a 3 for our last 3 shows where there's big Bears news. So maybe more will come later today. But Declan Doyle has left for the Ravens. Go ahead, Lauren.
They're going to hire their offensive coordinator like an hour after we're done.
100%. They 100% are. But for now, we'll discuss Declan Doyle leaving for the Ravens, what the Bears could be looking like for OC. What Cole Kmet said about Declan Doyle I thought was really interesting the other day on the Score. We'll get to all of that next year on the Bears Squad Show.
This episode of the Bears Squad Show is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you are right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for, where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, you can bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. So last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
All right, guys. So Declan Doyle leaves for the Ravens. It was like he's going to stay. He turned down the Eagles, and then the Ravens job opens up with Jesse Minters getting the job there, and now he gets to go be 6 months younger than his starting quarterback in Baltimore and, get the chance to call plays for Lamar Jackson. Like it's a hell of a job. Like it's a little bit different, Lauren, than I feel like how we talked on Friday about, Ian Cunningham. Like he's not really calling the shots in Atlanta, but like he kind of still is. But Matt Ryan has the final say, where Declan Doyle is like this young prodigy. And now he gets a chance to go call plays for a guy who's won 2 MVPs. And this is a great job for him. And it just kind of sucks for the Bears.
Yeah, you can see where this is the opportunity you can't turn down with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry. I mean, I know Henry's older and some of the receivers are older, but like still, like when you're looking for a first-time play caller opportunity, you're not going to get too much better than this. Like really good teams with built-in MVP quarterbacks don't become available all that often. So I think it's a real credit to Ben Johnson for backing up with action what he has said in words, that he wants these guys to leave and wants these guys to go get better jobs and ascend in the NFL. And it feels like to me like Declan Doyle in Baltimore he's only going to last 2 seasons. He either is great for 2 seasons and becomes a head coach, or he's bad for 2 seasons and gets fired. But like, we're going to find out real quickly, like just how good he is, on his own outside of the Sean Payton and Ben Johnson umbrellas.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of credit to Ben Johnson, because we talked, obviously, I mean, you could have blocked it and he didn't. And he was very vocal in the beginning of this of wanting his guys to be successful. And I think for Declan, yeah, I mean, you're getting thrown into an opportunity where you do have something kind of built in when it comes to an offense that's already functional. You don't feel like you have to fix a lot of things. You have a quarterback who's progressively gotten better throughout his seasons when it comes to throwing the ball. That's something that obviously was highly criticized when Lamar came into the league, and then he's just gotten better and better at that. And I do think it's just the perfect opportunity for him. And we're just seeing the offense shift. I mean, the NFL shift this way to these young offensive-minded guys, where we've seen the McVay tree, the Shanahan tree. We're now going to start seeing the Ben Johnson tree. And I feel like that's something that we'll be talking about in, let's say 10 years, hopefully we're like, oh, look at all these people that Ben Johnson hired and have gone on to get promotions in some form or fashion. But good for him. And I do think that in a sense, it is unfortunate for the Bears. I know he's not the play caller, but there is still a level of comfort of what he, his work with Caleb Williams and everything you're hearing around the league, as he was a big part and just how things, systematically, some of the designed plays and things like that, and the conversations between him and Ben. I mean, there's a reason Ben Johnson brought him there. And so to lose that after one season sucks. And just to me, more so the comfortability of having that like stableness for a couple years. He was probably going to be gone next year if he wasn't gone this year. But I think having that one more year where Caleb's working with those two same guys, you already lose Bieniemy, obviously. And so now you've got a couple guys offensively that you've got to replace and kind of figure out how they fit with Ben Johnson. And we've seen how particular he is. So we'll see the route they go with that.
Yeah, that was interesting too, what Cole Kmet pointed out when he was on the score, that because I think there's always this kind of question amongst fans and like I think even the media, just like, what is an OC that doesn't call plays? Like, what does he really do? Like, what's his key role? And Cole Kmet pointed out that like Declan Doyle was like a key part of their halftime adjustments. Like that's what you're missing. And that's something that was great for the Bears this year. Like it really felt like, especially in the back half of the season, where we saw obviously very different versions of Caleb Williams in the first half to the second half of the game. So that does feel like a huge loss when Cole, describes it of that way. But Lauren, when you think of now candidates to replace it, the Bears have put in one request in so far. Like, do you have anything you're hopeful for? Like what's like your view of this search process for Ben Johnson now?
I do have a theory about the replacement and like the things you're losing from Doyle there. Yeah, he was in charge of halftime adjustments and a bunch of different stuff. I can't help but think about that and wonder, like, Ben Johnson is choosing to let Declan Doyle do those things, but I can't help but think if Ben Johnson wanted to or was concerned about the things, he could just do them himself. Like, it's a good reflection of Ben empowering his assistants, but it's not like, oh no, will the Bears be able to make good halftime adjustments without Declan Doyle? Like, Ben Johnson can do it himself and is certainly going to look to hire somebody that he trusts to do it instead of him. But I think in any of those, it's a good reflection of Ben delegating as opposed to micromanaging. But if push comes to shove, he can put his hands on it and work his Ben Johnson magic. But I do really like the couple of names the Bears have been connected to so far as replacements. And one is Connor Sanger, the passing game coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals, who is kind of on this, I don't want to just say he's on the Declan Doyle trajectory because Doyle is particularly rare there. But like, this is someone who only got in the NFL coaching game a couple of years ago and already goes from assistant position coach to passing game coordinator really quickly in just a couple of seasons. And he's someone who I've heard a lot of good things as just being a smart, young football mind who's ascending quickly. And then the other name that they've been connected to, they put in a request to interview Troy Walters, who is the wide receivers coach for the Cincinnati Bengals, but he declined and wants to just stick around as the Bengals wide receivers coach and coaching, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I can't blame him there. I think he probably looks at it and says, well, I'm not going to leave for a non-play calling coordinator job because I'm happier off here. But the connection for both of those guys, Drew Petzing, the Cardinals offensive coordinator who hired Connor Sanger, is one of the best friends of Ben Johnson, was in his wedding. And then in Cincinnati, Ben coached with Zach Taylor on the Dolphins for a number of years. So I'm sure those two guys they kind of come out of nowhere. Like, how does Ben Johnson know these guys? I'm guessing they came well recommended from close friends of Ben Johnson, who's just getting some outside ideas, but could still end up just promoting internally. But why not talk to some guys from other organizations while you're allowed to?
Yeah, I saw something about the Connor Sanger. From Eric Galko. He's the director of football ops for the Shrine Bowl, which obviously he's coached back-to-back years for the West Shrine Bowl. But his quote on it said, Connor Sanger is absolutely a rising star in the NFL coaching world. I've gotten to see him for 2 years at the Shrine Bowl, and his leadership, communication, organization, and creativity stand out among the OCs we've had in the last 5 years. Special play caller and offensive leader. So you're seeing guys like that, or you're seeing comments like, if you just search his name real quick on Twitter, the amount of things that you see about him, just the leadership role, the communication. We've talked so much about kind of Ben Johnson's prickly personality and how he can be at times. And so I do think that kind of having a relationship in some way, whether it's like a friend of a friend knows you, as in this circumstance, obviously Drew Petzing is familiar with him. And I'm sure it was conversations of like, this type of guy has the same mindset of kind of the perfectionist mentality that Ben Johnson has, because he needs somebody to match that. He can't have somebody who's not going to come in and then have that same mindset, because it'll probably clash pretty quickly with how kind of quirky he is at times. So someone like that makes sense because there's probably been plenty of conversations about how their coaching style would mesh.
Lauren, do you feel like there's a clear favorite internally if they were to go that route? Like, is it Antoine Randall? Is there a conversation of promoting JT Barrett already and then hiring a new quarterback coach? Like, how do you feel about like the internal candidates if they were to go down that path?
Yeah, I personally would think Antoine Randall, given that he's got the assistant head coach tag in addition to wide receivers coach, like that was part of the way they were able to steal him, is they add that title to him and get him to Chicago. So that's like signaling, hey, we want to promote this guy and have this guy more involved. But like it might be easier and more natural to just promote Press Taylor. Like as much as I don't love Press Taylor's past work as an offensive coordinator, we'll say there's something to be said about like, if you promote a passing game coordinator OC, you don't necessarily have to replace him on the staff. It was kind of an extra position, if you will. Like a lot of teams will just fold that in and be wide receivers coach / passing game coordinator. You could promote Antoine Randall to add that title to him. And I kind of like the idea, not necessarily Press Taylor specifically, but this idea, like if you keep putting young ascending coaches in offensive coordinator role, you're going to lose them every other year. And that just does a lot of disruption to like year-to-year continuity of the voices in Caleb's head and the people that are working with him. And like Press Taylor doesn't strike me as the kind of coach right now that is going to get a lot of better opportunities. He still has a lot of, I think, career rehabilitation. So I kind of like the idea of having an offensive and defensive coordinator that you don't feel like are going to be leaving constantly and being replaced, and just have some of that continuity from season to season. Whereas, if it's Antoine Randall, he'll leave for some job in a couple of seasons, or if it's Connor Sanger, he'll probably leave like Declan Doyle, and it's not the end of the world, but I just like as much stability as you can take, because it's a real challenge for a head coach, even like Sean McVay, to cycle through coordinators every year. Even though you're the guy, like it's still an adjustment every single time.
Yeah, I just did a podcast recently because they hired Will Lying and they haven't really announced what exactly he's going to be doing. It's just kind of like an undisclosed position. But I did a pod with Coach Bill O'Brien because he's worked with him for like 13 years, multiple stops. They were at Penn State together. They were at Houston together. They were at the Patriots the one year. They were at Alabama. Then they went to Boston College. So they've been together for a really long time. And he had so many good things to say about him. Number one, just the different things that he's done. He's been an offensive coordinator. He's worked with tight ends. He's worked with quarterbacks. He's worked on the defensive side of the ball at certain stops. And so that's a name that I kind of am just listening to see what exactly they're doing with him, because they haven't announced it, but he has a lot of experience everywhere on the offense. And to your point, Lauren, in that form and fashion of maybe having somebody that you're not worried about getting like poached in a couple years, just because he has kind of bounced around and he's been with O'Brien for a while, but he hasn't been ever that guy talked about of like, oh, I see him as, a play caller in the NFL. It's been more of a sense of he could do a lot of different things. And so maybe he can help quarterbacks in certain ways. He obviously worked with Castellanos a lot, who is one of the more mobile dual threat quarterbacks. So being able to come and work with Caleb Williams, who uses his legs, I feel like could be beneficial because he has a lot of experience with that too. So that name, I'm just kind of interested to see what they do with that and how that trickles down to some of the other things.
Yeah, I don't have any specifically anyone in mind, I would say, but I am curious, like, it does feel like with everything that's going on with NIL and this disaster that is college football, that we're seeing a lot of college coaches jump ship. We saw, Mike Mickens left Notre Dame to go to Baltimore. We saw Chris O'Leary, who was the defensive coordinator at Western Michigan. He's now the DC with the Chargers. Like, it does feel like we're seeing some like big jumps happening from the college to the pro ranks. And like, we're seeing all these older coaches retire. So it feels like there's a lot of people running away from college football. So I do wonder, like, if maybe there's some guys that like Ben Johnson might even have an eye on in the college ranks of like, this might be someone that comes in, like kind of, I guess, the anti-Arthur Smith, since he went to Ohio State, which is still weird to me.
Yeah, and like Chip Kelly went to Northwestern, is that right?
Yes, yes, he did.
I don't know if these older guys know what they're getting into going back to the college game. It's changed a little bit, fellas.
I feel like those guys are like, just like, well, Arthur Smith really shocked me, to be honest. Like Chip, I feel like it's just like, was like, maybe, I guess I have options because it ended so bad. But like the fact that Chip Kelly is the offensive coordinator at Northwestern, just like, is shocking to me that he's going to be the most veteran OC in the city of Chicago. And it won't be whoever the Bears hire at OC. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see like how quickly this process moves for the Bears. Like, I think it'll just give us some good intel too of like more of just like what Ben Johnson is looking for in a coach, like how comfortable he is going outside of his tree. Where like, like McVay kind of sits in his tree. Like it's It's McVay, Shanahan, guys who have failed elsewhere that left Shanahan. They then end up with McVay, like Michael LaFleur, like who's now the Cardinals head coach. Like, I am curious just like what the path that Ben Johnson takes now going forward when these coaches leave.
I would have liked, if we were pulling from college, it's too late now, but Brian Hartline from Ohio State would have made a lot of sense. Ben Johnson coached him in Miami for the last couple of seasons, and not he wasn't the wide receivers coach at that time, but still like has a literal connection, not just like who's the hot name at Ohio State, but like a real connection to Ben Johnson that would have been a fun pull. But now that he's at South Florida, I imagine like he's not just going to bail on his team. He's a head coach in college. I think he'd rather be that than a non-play calling offensive coordinator in the NFL.
Which, side note too, Will Lawing was also the wide receiver at UNC when Ben Johnson was there. So they knew each other from college too. Yeah, they're on the same team.
I did not know that.
Interesting. All right, let's take our final break here. We'll talk about the Super Bowl that's coming up. We got a former Bear that we're going to talk about a little bit who's making some noise. We'll quickly mention that. It feels like there is also maybe some indication that the Bears are heading to Spain next year. We'll get to all of that. Plus, we'll preview the game coming up this weekend next year on the Bears Squad Show. Today's episode of the Bears Squad Show is brought to you by Betterhelp. February can be a lot. Flowers, candy, stuffed animals, and so much talk about relationships. It can honestly feel like everyone else has it all together in their love life. But here's the truth. Whether you're married, dating, single, or just focusing on you, most people are still figuring it out. And no matter where you are in your romantic journey, therapy can help you find your way. It can help you clear what you want, be clear on what you want, what feels heavy, and how to take some pressure off yourself. It can help you communicate better, set healthier boundaries, and stop carrying everything alone. BetterHelp has licensed therapists in the U.S., and they do the initial matching work for you so you can focus on your goals. And if you want to switch therapists, you can at any time. Sign up to get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. All right, guys. So Velus Jones Jr. He's tweeting. He's talking about the right to freedom of speech when he's interviewed at the Monday Night Super Bowl bonanza that they've always got going on. Just Lauren, as you see it all playing out, just chuckling, or what you thinking?
You know, I've been trying not to walk a line. A couple of years ago, me and some other Bears reporters ran into Velus Jones at the Senior Bowl. It was like right after the Bears cut him, and we talked with him in a bar for quite some time. And I'm not ready to make that full conversation public yet, but learned a lot about how Velus Jones thinks about Velus Jones, and it is now reflected in further public conversations he has had. Yeah, definitely someone who, you know, you don't wish any ill will, and you wish he would have worked better in Chicago, but you're not necessarily feeling like, oh wow, like you really hope his career turns around and goes on to be something special somewhere else. There doesn't seem to be a lot of like self-awareness or humility in how he reflects on his time in Chicago, and that really didn't feel right.
Yeah, I just don't totally understand. I'm in my head, I'm like, you're a player who we count as one of Ryan Pohl's worst mistakes as a general manager in Chicago when it comes to drafting you that high, a player who played a lot of special teams in college. He was almost 30 years old when he was getting drafted already. There was a lot of negatives in the sense of that. And so, of course, we all hoped it worked out, but it was time and time again when you talk about all the muffed punts and things like that kind of happened. So to me, it's odd. You see players do that when maybe they feel like they didn't get the opportunity to show what they could do, or, you know, new coaching staff comes in and they're just traded for, and they didn't maybe feel like they deserved to do that, or they were cut because of cap casualty stuff, and they get a little, things get a little spicy like that. But Velus Jones, I was like, this is such a weird thing to kind of try and clap back. I know some of the Twitter stuff, and Bears fans obviously got on that really quick when he was making comments, but it's just a really odd one for me, because I feel like if anything, you should be very thankful that this organization tried to give you a chance and felt like there was something there. And, you know, you got more money than probably you should have made because you were drafted as high as you were. And so it's a weird battle to fight, I feel like, on Velus's side.
It's a great point, because like not only did they give him a chance to succeed, but like they gave him more chances than he deserved. Right? Yeah. They stuck with him in ways that a lot of other players wouldn't have gotten the same leash. Like, he was allowed to make more mistakes seemingly than other guys were allowed to make, and still couldn't get over the hump. And it just doesn't seem to be his view of how that went down seems to be different than everybody else's view.
Yeah, it's a little strange. It's just strange. Like, I just don't get it. Like you said, Lauren, like, they gave him so many chances. Like, I felt like he should be grateful, honestly, for like his time, because I feel like any other GM cuts him at least a year before he gets moved on from this organization. But then we also found out when Roger Goodell was meeting with the media that they are going to add more international games. They are going to go back to Madrid or go to Madrid this upcoming year. And that's important for the Bears because they're one of the 3 teams that's their marketing country. And the Bears have that extra home game. They're the only NFC team of the 3. So, like, putting the puzzle pieces together, like, it kind of feels like Caleb Williams going to Germany next year would be a big marketing push, Lauren, for the NFL.
Yeah, and I would assume as a home game, like, they're not going to put a divisional matchup over there. Like, that's too much money. So I'm trying to like piece together the opponents, right? There's six other non-divisional home opponents: Buccaneers, Eagles, Jaguars, Jets, Patriots, Saints. The Bears Jaguars London rematch, but this time in Spain. I mean, they love to send the Jaguars overseas, even as the road team. So that would make some sense. I would imagine if the Patriots win the Super Bowl, I don't know if they're going to make them go overseas, but Jets, Jaguars, Saints, maybe Eagles and Buccaneers are in there. Like, those could be some fun games, but certainly, you're going to miss not having that one at Soldier Field.
Yeah, my first thought was like it's going to end up being Bears Jags. It just feels like it's heading that way, mainly because it's, well, obviously the London game, and it's every time I feel like, oh yay, I get to see, watch Bears Jags in person. It ends up being they send them away somewhere. But also, to your point, they send Jags out of the country a lot. The Jags like to, like, Shad Khan's been very vocal about he likes to have those games he likes to continue to spread the Jaguars and, kind of expand the fan base across the globe. And Shad Khan's very vocal about that. So I don't know how much like they get conversation in that. Like, I don't know if Shad Khan's like, yeah, we'll do it. Or I don't know what those talks look like, but I could see that being one. It makes sense. I also think there's some storylines there that can be fascinating when it comes to Liam Cohen and Ben Johnson. Both will be in year 2. I did hear that this last time when they went over to London, Travis Hunter had 1 billion fans in London. And so maybe you're talking about adding that just like star player that people think are cool in other countries. And then Caleb Williams, obviously, I'm sure will be a part of that too. So I do think there's enough storylines in that. Press Taylor and Shane Waldron on each side. Not that other countries care about that. But
I forgot about that.
I did. But that's why I kind of rolled my eyes when you said earlier, Lauren, about Press Taylor. I was like, please do not. But we had the same exact conversations a couple of weeks ago when we're like, is Grant Udinski going anywhere? Maybe Shane Waldron gets promoted. I was like, please stop doing this to me. But yeah, so I could see that one being a cool storyline. I'm not the biggest fan of the international games personally. I just scheduling wise, I don't totally love it. But I also think the NFL kind of is, they contradict themselves a little bit with like hammering player safety so much, but making a team go to Australia this year and like sit on a plane for a day and then play football. It just doesn't totally add up logistically for me to where they feel like priorities are. I get the point. They get a lot of money and they're trying to make it like a global thing, but I don't personally love them. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're headed out there.
Yeah. When they were talking about Robert Kraft did an interview the other day, and he talked about the NFL wants to go to 18 games, wants every single team to play an international game. I was like, okay, like, I guess like at least we're definitely going to be getting up at 8 a.m. to watch a Bears game once a year. So like, great, like looking forward to it. But at least our post game shows, Lauren, will be at like 12 o'clock or like 11 o'clock. So we'll have the rest of our day to ourselves those days.
It's a whole new ball game, but it's cool to get the opportunity to see those guys play elsewhere. But I don't know. I'm curious how the NFL weighs like the marqueeness of the matchup. Like, they say, okay, well, there's a chance the Jets might fire Aaron Glenn if this season doesn't go well. So maybe they don't want to throw the Jets over there. Like, is there like a sweet spot between, you don't want the game to be too good because you want that on your time zones and your ratings, but you don't want it to be like a team that's a total disaster. So like Saints, Buccaneers, Eagles, maybe Jets, because Bears Jaguars might be too good of a matchup of like two teams that are ascending playoff teams. Bears Patriots might be too much. Like, I don't know. I just hope like it's good timing with the season and the bye week and where they kind of structure in a stretch of games, as opposed to like if you just play the Packers, like if you're playing the Packers right away afterwards or right away before, like I just hope it's not an impactful part of the schedule.
All right, last thing we'll hit on here. At the moment, still Seattle Seahawks 4.5-point favorites on Sunday over the Patriots. Guys, it feels like everyone's just picking the Seahawks. Like it's at the point now where like I'm just picking the Patriots because everyone else is picking the Seahawks. Like I'm just gonna fade everyone at this point. Like I'm fine with being wrong, but like Drake May like hasn't played the best football, I would say, in the playoffs, but he's played obviously a lot of the best defenses in the NFL. He'll play another one on Sunday against the Seahawks. But at this point, like I'm just like, I think I'm just going to roll with the Patriots and just be sad that the Patriots dynasty looks like it might be back. So, Lauren, how do you feel about the game on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I'm picking a winner, I think Seattle's going to win. But I'm trying to find my rooting interest in this, right? It's like,
yeah,
well, like, you know, that Seattle, I kind of find myself like feeling bad for how Jackson Smith and Jigba had to deal with Shane Waldron and then answer questions about it and try and like, well, you know, good for you. Like there's a sympathetic character there in JSN who's like, oh, well, he's been through some of the same things we've been through. So I kind of like that. I also like the idea of like, it makes the Vikings look really bad if Sam Darnold goes and wins a Super Bowl the very next year after they move on from him. So I'm kind of with you there, but you know, the Patriots, they have former Bears legend Kyrus Tonga on the defensive line. Thomas Brown is on their coaching staff. Like I can find myself talking my way into both teams, but something keeps bringing me back to the Seattle Seahawks as like, I think I'd prefer to see them win because maybe it does feel a little bit, I don't want to say more fluky with them, but like the Patriots are just kind of scratching the surface with Drake May and they like they're not the best version of the Patriots. They're going to be good next year and beyond. Like they're kind of in a similar stage for where the Bears are in terms of team building process. They've got a really bright future. Seattle feels a little bit more to me like, hey, everything is working really well right now, and maybe it'll keep working, but we'll see. Like there's a lot more potential for drop off there, losing their offensive coordinator, and if Sam Darnold turns back into a pumpkin and just trying to kind of maintain that success. So I think I'd rather see more of the, I don't want to call them the surprise team, but more of the, you know, the short kind of term team as opposed to like the Patriots will be fine for a while. So if they don't win it this year, they'll get another chance more easily than the Seahawks will.
Yeah, one of the things I feel like it's going to boil down to where both of the quarterbacks have kind of done opposite things in the postseason from what they did in regular season. Sam Darnold led the league in turnovers this year between his fumbles and his picks, and then now hasn't thrown a single one in the postseason. And then Drake May, opposite, barely turned the ball over during the regular season. I think he had like 31 touchdowns, 6 picks, something like that. And then now we've seen it's been like multiple fumbles in the games, multiple turnovers in the games. So it's which of these quarterbacks are, which version of themselves are they? Are they what we've seen in the postseason, or are we what we've seen in the regular season? I think that could determine this a lot. But Seattle's defense is just so nasty. I like New England's, but Seattle to me just does everything that you want to see a defensive do on all levels. And that's really fun for me. I just love watching defenses like that. And I do think the storyline of Sam Darnold is kind of fun. Like, you know, he's been on 5 teams. He kind of got booted out of everywhere. And then the Vikings finally got something and then lost it. And so it's kind of fun to watch him continue on, because I feel like that's been a story now for 2 years of like, when is Sam Darnold going to suck again? And he just keeps being like, all right, well, I'm going to keep going. And so I think that I like the Seattle storyline better. I also do. I'm just like, I don't want to see the Patriots get this again. I'm like, you guys deserved a little bit longer of pain than you got. But I think there's a lot of likable things about the New England too, when it comes to Vrabel. You know, Tennessee was just like, peace out, you're not good enough here. And then he's in the Super Bowl. So I do think that there's fun storylines on each time. There's also quite a few Jacksonville. I think 3 players from Jacksonville and one of the coaches on the Patriots are all from Jacksonville. So there's cool storylines tied to where I live with that. So that's fun. But I think this is Seattle's game. I think they win. I think they win pretty easily. And I'm fine with that.
I do want to see if Mike Vrabel will be true to his word and follow through on the dismemberment he promised if he wins the Super Bowl. That's
I mean,
do you want to hear a crazy stat too that I looked up yesterday? So the do what?
I hope the stat is related to Mike Vrabel's coach.
It was something we kind of talked about earlier, but when so the Patriots all year only went for it on 4th down 12 times. The Bears did that in the postseason, and 2 games in the postseason went for 4th down 12 times, and the Patriots all year.
That's crazy. They play different games than the Bears. It feels like in terms of like how like they coach their team and everything. But I think it's gonna be a fun one. Like I don't think it's gonna be a blowout or anything like that. Even though Seattle's been rolling through the playoffs, and it's gonna be a fascinating game. And well, that will do it for this episode of the Bears Squad Show. We'll be back with you guys on Friday at 11. This crew will return on a Friday at 10. This crew will return next Tuesday at 11. So we will talk to you on Friday for some more Bears draft conversation. Enjoy your week. Peace.